everyone, this is Mrs. Pagan, and in today's lesson we're going to be talking about solving absolute value equations. Before we get started, let's talk about what is absolute value. Well, by definition, absolute value of a number x written, and you'll see how it's written, absolute value of x is the distance. I'm going to underline this word because it's really important. The number is from 0. I'm going to underline 0 as well because that's important on a number line. Alright, so let's talk about how does this translate into numbers. So let's say, what is the absolute value of 5? First of all, I'm going to go ahead and write that in correct notation. Absolute value of 5, or the absolute value of -5. Absolute value of -5. So when I see these two problems, really what I'm asking for is how far is 5 from 0? So I'm going to write that question because that's what absolute value really asks for. How far is 5 from 0? Now, some of you might be like, that's really easy. Some of you might not see it right away, so we're going to go ahead and talk about that. Well, here's what we're looking at. Let's say that we have a number line, and let's say that 0 is right in the middle. Well, I know that 5, first on the number line, there's a positive section, and there's also a negative section. So I know that positive 5 is going to be, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's where 5 would be on the number line. The question is, how far is this from 0? Well, let's count. That was 1 unit away, 2, 3, 4, 5 units away. So the answer to that question would be 5 units. So what is the absolute value of 5? It will be 5. Now let's talk about absolute value of -5. Well, we know that negatives are to the left of 0, so we're going to go ahead and plot -5. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So here's -5. The question once again is, how far is -5 from 0? Well, we can count that really quick. I'm going to just change my color. So I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units away as well. And therefore, the absolute value of -5 is 5. Now, consider the following. We are talking about distance. And we know that distance cannot be a negative value. We don't travel -1.2 miles. We only travel positive miles. For example, I ran 5 miles today. We rarely hear people saying, I ran -5 miles today. So that's important to us. Well, since absolute value is a representation of the distance, notice that both answers were positive. Because we are talking about distance. That's going to be very valuable to us later on. All right. Well, I'm going to just kind of do one quick problem, see if you can do this on the side. So let's put this on the side. Let's do a side problem. So what's the absolute value of -7 then? Well, how far is -7 from 0? Hopefully you're saying the same thing that I am, which is 7 units away. Let's do one last one. What about the absolute value of 2? How far is 2 from 0? Well, it's 2 units away, so the absolute value of 2 will also be 2. Just kind of side problems just to make sure you completely understand this concept before we move on. All right. Well, so how does this apply to solving absolute value equations? Well, here's a problem that we have. Absolute value of 9 minus 3n equals 15. So what we're looking for is where am I? So I'm 15 units away from 0. Well, here's my dilemma. I don't know if this is moving in the positive direction or negative direction. So since I'm not a psychic, I have to break this down into two problems. So I have to go in the number line, and I'm just going to show you. Here's 0. This 9 minus 3n could be in the positive direction, which would then give me, well, 9 minus 3n has to equal 15. But it could also be in the negative direction, because I could be 15 units to the right, or I could be 15 units moving to the left. And since I don't know exactly if this is a positive or a negative, I have to consider both cases. Well, if I move in the negative direction, this would be negative 9 minus 3n. So I have two equations. 9 minus 3n could equal positive 15, or negative in quantity 9 minus 3n equals positive 15 as well. So it's got to be one or the other, but we have to consider both scenarios, okay? So that's why we create two equations, and I'm going to go ahead and put an or because it's going to be one or the other. All right, so let's go ahead and solve both of these equations. Well, I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. Negative 3n equals positive 6 divided by negative 3 on both sides, and n equals negative 2. So this could be one of my solutions, and I'm going to bring this or down just so that it's down there. And then I'm going to go ahead and continue solving the right side of this, the second equation. I'm going to distribute this negative. So I have negative 9 plus 3n equals positive 15. Add the 9 to the other side. So we're just using basic algebra skills here. That's 24 divided by 3 on both sides, and n equals 8. So this is our other answer. N equals negative 2 or n equals 8 would result in this inequality or absolute value actually equaling 15. So let's go ahead and check our final answers to see if this really does work. So I'm going to go ahead and input both of these into the absolute value that I have. So here's our checking. I like to write a big check there. That's how I know I'm checking the problem. Absolute value of 9 minus 3n equals 15. So let's go ahead and start with negative 2 first. Absolute value of 9 minus 3 times negative 2 equals 15. Is this true? Well, absolute value of 9, negative 3 times negative 6 is positive 16 equals 15. So let's keep going. Is 9 plus 6 is 15. Absolute value of 15 equals 15. Is the distance of 15 from 0 15 units away? Yes, 15 does equal 15. Therefore, since the number 15 is 15 units away from 0, that does work. All right, let's go ahead and check the second problem. So we know that this one is correct. N equals negative 2 is a solution. Let's see if n equals 8 is also a solution. So we're going to go ahead and check that one out. Well, we have 9 minus 3n equals 15. This was the original equation that I'm using to check my work. I'm not using any part of the problems that I've created. And I'm going to go ahead and put 8 in there. So absolute value of 9 minus 3 times 8 equals 15. 9 minus 3 times 8 is 24 equals 15. Absolute value of 9 minus 24 is negative 15. So the question becomes, how far is negative 15 from 0? The answer to that is 15 units. And yes, 15 does equal 15. Therefore, n equals 8 is also a solution. So both of these are solutions to our problem. And you can kind of see my number line to better explain my results of why I had to go in the positive and negative directions. All right, well done on this problem. Let's go ahead and try another problem just like this one. All right, so in this one, what the problem says is we want to solve the absolute value equations again. We want to check our answers, and we want to explain this better using a number line. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the number line. Here's a 0, okay? The question is, how far is 1/2 W minus 1 from 0? I want to be 0 units away from 0. Well, that means I'm exactly on that location. I have not moved at all. I want to be right there on 0, not moving to the right any or left any, or I should say to the right 0 units and to the left 0 units. Well, that's numerically, number line wise, that's how the answer is going to look. And so here's what the answer then would become. 1/2 W minus 1 equals 0. You can also say, since we know absolute values create two solutions, we can also say negative of 1/2 W minus 1 equals 0. But I think you're about to see what really happens to these solutions. All right, so let's go ahead and solve. We're going to put this or between us. So let's solve the first equation that we created. We're going to add 1 to both sides. So we have 1/2 W equals 1. Well, I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2 over 1. These cancel. W equals 1 times 2 is 2. So that's one of our answers. I'm going to go ahead and bring down this or. I do that because I don't want to forget the or. And then I'm going to go ahead and write, distribute this negative to everything. So we have negative 1/2 W plus 1 equals 0. So we're going to go ahead and subtract the 1 to the other side. Negative 1/2 W equals negative 1. And we're going to go ahead and divide or multiply by the reciprocal, which is negative 2 over 1. Negative 2 over 1, these cancel. W equals positive 2. Now, notice that both of these solutions are the same, which is very true because there was only one solution, really. There was only one location you could be to be 0 units away from 0, and that would be exactly on 0. So it's kind of cool to see the visual and the algebraic coming together. Now let's check our answers. Since both of them are 2, I'm just going to check the answer once. I'm going to write a little check here, and I always go back to the original problem that they gave me. So I'm going to write that down. All right. So I'm going to substitute in the solution of 2. Absolute value of 1/2 times 2 minus 1. Close the absolute value equals 0. Well, absolute value of 1/2 times 2 is 1 minus 1 equals 0. Absolute value of 1 minus 1 is 0. And what is the absolute value of 0? Well, it's 0 units away from 0. Therefore, 0 does equal 0. And yes, both of these are solutions. Or we can say W equals 2 in this case. All right, so great job on that problem. Let's talk about this last problem. And the problem says, I want to be, so here's the 0. I want to be negative 21 units this way to the right of 0 and negative 21 units to the left of 0. And the problem with that is distance cannot be negative. Therefore, there are no solutions to this problem because I cannot be negative 21 units to the right and negative 21 units to the left of 0 distance-wise. So that was a really interesting, tricky problem, and we can see it visually that it's not going to work for us. So I just want to say great job on today's lesson. Hopefully you understand absolute value equations. We can't wait to see you in class and talk more about them. Have a great day.